Is your freedom real if you cannot afford to live?
Remember, we fight for what's right because it's time to go right.
Are politicians fighting the wrong battles while Americans fight their bills? Welcome to the real conversation.
Our bills rising and the grocery line grows. Everybody feeling pressure, nobody really knows. Headlines screaming, but the truth stands still. Real life happens when you open that bill. This ain't about left or right tonight. It's about truth in the spotlight. Welcome to Go Right, where the truth meets reality. Go right with Peter Boykin, the Constitutionalist for liberty. Voices rising strong and free, talking real responsibility. Welcome to Go Right. Welcome to Go Right.
Federal, state, and local lines, where policy meets everyday life.
This is where the conversation starts. Welcome to Go Right. Stand up, let your voice be heard. Go right with Peter Boykin, where freedom is more than just a word. GoRightNews.com. It's time to go right.
Is your freedom real if you cannot afford to live? Welcome to hashtag Go Right with Peter Boykin. I'm your Constitutionalist for liberty. Freedom sounds powerful in speeches. It sounds inspiring in campaign ads. It sounds heroic in political slogans. Politicians stand behind podiums and talk about liberty, opportunity, and the American dream. They talk about growth, progress, and historic moments. But freedom feels very different when the lights are about to be shut off, when the gas tank is half empty, and payday is still days or weeks away, and when families are choosing between groceries and prescriptions. That is where the real conversation begins. Because freedom is not just an abstract principle, it is a lived experience. It is the ability to breathe without constant financial pressure tightening around your chest. It is the ability to plan for tomorrow instead of surviving today. When citizens feel trapped by rising costs, shrinking purchasing power, and policies that seem disconnected from reality, they begin to question whether the system is still working for them. And that is the moment where trust begins to fracture. When politics argue about symbolic battles while your grocery bills climb, something is broken. Not because cultural issues do not matter, but because priorities appear misaligned with the daily reality of the people they represent. Citizens watch leaders fight over headlines while kitchen tables become places for financial stress and anxiety. When federal spending expands without discipline and inflation follows, something's broken. When officials claim victory because inflation slowed while prices remain permanently high, families notice the gap between economic language and economic reality. And numbers on a chart do not change what people feel at the checkout counter. When energy policy drives up transportation and utility costs, the ripple effect spreads through every sector of this economy. Food becomes more expensive. Manufacturing becomes more expensive. Housing becomes more expensive. And every layer of the system amplifies the pressure on ordinary people. When state regulations quietly increase insurance premiums, restrict competition, or create licensing barriers that raise costs for small businesses, something is broken. State governments often operate below the national spotlight, yet they influence daily expenses in profound ways. Decisions made in state capitals shape whether markets are competitive or constrained, whether businesses grow or struggle, and whether consumers pay more than necessary. When local zoning boards restrict housing supply, delay permits, and limit development while wondering why rent explodes, something is broken. Local government is often where affordability is won or lost. Infrastructure planning affects commuting costs and traffic. And property tax decisions shape whether families can remain in their homes. Small bureaucratic choices accumulate into large financial consequences. And when the constitutional interpretation appears to stretch in one direction and tighten in another depending on political convenience, trust begins to fracture even further. Citizens do not expect unanimous agreement, but they do expect consistency. They expect the rules to apply evenly, regardless of party or ideology. When federal power seems elastic, expanding in some contexts and shrinking in others, Americans begin to question whether the Constitution is guiding decisions or whether decisions are guiding interpretations of the Constitution. We do not live in a democracy of moods. We live in a constitutional republic. That means power is limited. Authority is defined. Checks and balances exist to prevent overreach. Consistency matters because it is the foundation of legitimacy. Without consistency, institutions lose credibility, and without credibility, trust erodes. Economic stability is not partisan. Competence is not ideological. Affordability is not left or right. It is foundational. It is the baseline requirement for a functioning society. And when families cannot afford basic necessities, political debates feel disconnected from reality. Citizens do not need perfect outcomes. They need leadership focused on practical solutions that reduce pressure instead of increasing it. Lower energy costs. Expand housing supply. Reform regulatory burdens that choke small businesses. Apply constitutional principles consistency so citizens know the rules do not change depending on who holds power. These are not radical demands, they are basic expectations. And when leaders fail to meet those expectations, voters do not always respond with anger first. They respond with disengagement. They stop listening. They stop believing. They walk away from parties, both parties, institutions, and systems that no longer feel responsive. Not because they hate America, but because they feel unheard inside of it. So the next political battle that truly matters will not be fought on social media timelines or cable news panels. It will be fought at the kitchen table, where families measure success not by political victories, but by whether they can afford to live with dignity and stability. Freedom is not only the right to speak, it is the ability to live without constant financial suffocation. It is the ability to build a future without feeling like the ground is consistently shifting beneath your feet. And the leaders who understand that reality, who choose substance over symbolism and competence over performance, will be the ones who rebuild trust in this constitutional republic and remind citizens that freedom is not just something you hear about, it is something you can actually feel. Thanks for tuning in to #GoRight with me, Peter Boykin, the Constitutionalist for Liberty. You can follow us at GoRightNews.com, PeterBoykin.com, GoRightNC.com. You can watch us on Rumble and YouTube, listen to us on Spreaker, Spotify, Apple, and Amazon, and lots of other places. And you can support independent journalism at Cash App at the $ GoRightNews. God bless everybody.
Standing on a hill again, everyone convinced they win. Voices loud like thunder rolls, nobody listening to souls. Flags raised high like battle cries, truth gets lost between the sides. Lions run deep into the sand, but no one sees the other hand. Left side shouting, they're the cure. Right side certain, they're the pure. Every headline fuels a flame, different jersey, same old game. We build walls with every word,
call each other absurd, but the ground beneath our feet is cracking where we stand and speak. Everybody ready to die on this hill, digging trenches deeper still. But if we fall, who takes the lead? If no one stops to see the bleed, you wanna die on this hill tonight, holding tight to being right with the real pack we never see is walking down together, free, not left, not right, alone and blind, but forward with a different mind. The hill we die upon is pride, the road we need is side by side. Echo chambers made of steel, every truth begins to peel. Algorithms draw the lines, turning neighbors into signs. We forget the common ground while chasing who's allowed to own the truth or claim the light, while losing what is actually right. Everybody screaming louder now, no one asking how. We got so far from what we knew, that freedom means more than you. You wanna die on this hill tonight, holding tight to being right, but the real path we never see is walking down together, free, not left, not right, alone and blind, but forward with a different mind. The hill we die upon is pride, the road we need is side by side. Maybe the bravest thing to do is walk away from me versus you. Lay the armor on the ground, hear the quiet, hopeful sound. Not surrender, not defeat, but choosing where our futures meet. The strongest stand we ever make is choosing unity for freedom's sake. Let's die on the hill where hate ends here, where courage means we face the fear, where truth is built with open hands, not broken by divided lands. Go right together down the way, beyond the fray, beyond the fight, beyond the fray. The path is clear when we decide to walk the road side by side. Step down from the hill tonight, not losing, just seeing the light. Go right together, not apart. That's where real freedom starts. Step down from the hill tonight, not losing, just seeing the light. Go right together, not apart. That's where real freedom starts.
Are politicians fighting the wrong battles while Americans fight their bills? Welcome back to Go Right with Peter Boykin, the Constitutionalist for Liberty. Let's slow this down and picture something real. Not a rally, not a hearing room, not a cable news split screen with 8 people yelling over each other. Picture a kitchen table. There is a stack of mail, a power bill, a grocery receipt that is noticeably higher than it used to be, an insurance statement with a premium increase, a rent or mortgage payment that takes a bigger bite out of the paycheck than it did a year ago, a car payment, a credit card balance that somehow barely moves, even when you are trying to be responsible. Nobody at that table is opening with a lecture on ideology. Nobody is leading with a debate about hashtags. They are doing math. Everyone's bills are high. Inflation may cool on paper. Economists may celebrate that the rate of increase has slowed, but prices rarely retreat in real life. When the cost of living jumps, it resets the baseline. The grocery store does not announce a rollback to the old normal. The utility company does not send a letter saying we decided to charge less. The reality is simple. People are not arguing about abstract ideology at the kitchen table. They are calculating survival. And here is where this becomes more than economics. In a constitutional republic, when economic stability erodes, trust in government erodes with it. If citizens feel squeezed, unheard, and ignored, legitimacy weakens from the bottom up. Now look at what dominates the headlines. Voters are not blind. They see patterns. They see performative hearings, clearly designed for viral clips. They see symbolic fights that are less about solving problems and more about energizing a base. They see outrage cycles that burn hot for 48 hours and then disappear, replaced by the next crisis. Meanwhile, the grocery total rises. Cultural debates matter in a free society. Constitutional rights matter deeply. But when household stability is threatened, citizens measure leadership differently. They measure it by competence, by seriousness, by whether someone is focused on results rather than applause. When politicians obsess over headline controversies while household budgets strain, people begin to disengage. Not because they suddenly stopped caring about the country, but because they crave practical solutions more than ideological purity tests. Now let's talk about where this actually starts. At the federal level, decisions ripple through every household, whether people realize it or not. When government borrows and spends aggressively, the effects do not stay in Washington. They show up in mortgage rates. They show up in credit card interest. They show up in the price of goods and services. Energy policy affects fuel and electricity. And energy is not just one line item. It touches everything. Transportation, food distribution, manufacturing, heating, and cooling. When energy costs rise, the entire system feels it. Trade and manufacturing decisions shape supply chains, wages, and resilience. Federal regulations influence healthcare premiums, compliance costs for small businesses, and the price of operating in America. Every federal rule eventually appears somewhere on a bill. And then there is the constitutional layer. Chief Justice John Roberts concluded that Congress could not force Americans into commerce under the Commerce Clause. Yet the Affordable Care Act individual mandate was upheld by redefining its penalty as a tax under Congress's taxing authority. During pandemic litigation, vaccine mandates tied to federal employment and federally funded health care were permitted under statutory authority, while broader private sector mandates were blocked. Now, trade authority and tariffs face scrutiny over executive limits. The debate is not whether authority exists. It is how consistently it is interpreted. When federal power appears elastic, expanding in some areas and restrained in others, Americans notice justice is supposed to be blind. The Constitution is supposed to be the standard. If constitutional reasoning seems to stretch depending on who holds power, institutional trust weakens. But it does not stop in Washington. State governments shape daily expenses than most citizens realize. State tax structures affect fuel taxes, sales taxes, and property tax frameworks. Insurance regulations determine what families pay for health, auto, and home coverage. Energy infrastructure decisions affect reliability and pricing. Licensing requirements and regulatory burdens influence how easily businesses can compete or how much cost gets passed down to consumers. States can reduce friction and encourage competition, or they can layer bureaucracy on top of bureaucracy until prices quietly rise. The State House may not dominate national news, but its policies shape everyday affordability. Then we get to the most overlooked level, local government. This is where the cost of living becomes personal. County commissioners, city councils, zoning boards, and planning authorities. These are the bodies that control housing supply through land use decisions. They influence property tax rates. They determine how quickly or slowly permits are issued. They shape infrastructure planning that affects traffic, commuting time, and fuel usage. Housing affordability often begins locally. If zoning restricts supply, prices rise. If permitting takes months or years, costs increase. If infrastructure planning fails to keep up with growth, congestion becomes an invisible tax on time and fuel. Small business survival depends heavily on local compliance processes. Layers of local requirements can either encourage entrepreneurship or quietly strangle it. Yet local government often receives the least attention from voters until frustration boils over. This is where real leadership matters. Not symbolism, not viral outrage, competence. So why are so many Americans walking away from both parties? When everyday financial stress goes unanswered, people disengage. They are not necessarily becoming apolitical. They are becoming disillusioned. They want stability. They want seriousness. They want leaders who understand that economic pressure is not theoretical. It is a lived reality. It is felt in every monthly statement and every checkout line. In a constitutional republic, legitimacy flows upward from the citizen. If the citizen is financially suffocating, no amount of culture war theatrics will restore trust. And the real question is not who wins the next news cycle. The real question is who is serious about lowering the cost of living at every level of government. Who is serious about responsible federal spending, about consistent constitutional interpretation, about state-level reforms that reduce hidden cost drivers, about local decisions that expand housing and encourage economic growth rather than restrict it. Because the next political battle that truly matters will not be fought on social media. It will be fought at the kitchen table, and the leaders who understand that reality, who focus on competence over performance and substance over spectacle, will be the ones who rebuild trust in this constitutional republic and remind Americans that government exists to serve the people, not distract them while their bills keep rising. Thank you for listening and watching Go Right News. Please share, like, subscribe, and tell others what you heard here today. Together, let's go right toward a better tomorrow.
Quiet roads under restless skies. We've been walking through the noise and lies. Every voice trying to be heard, every truth buried under words. Lines drawn deep across the land, different dreams in different hands. Everyone's certain they're right, while we lose a common light. Scrolling through 1,000 fears, echo chambers in our ears. But somewhere past the fight to win, there's a chance to begin again. Maybe we forgot the way, maybe hope just lost its say. But I can feel it in the air tonight, something moving toward the light. We watch tomorrow rise through divided skies. If we stand instead of fall apart, we can mend a broken heart. No more left or right alone. Find a path that leads us home. Step by step we start, going right in the heart. Cities burning with debate, small towns feeling left away. Promises that fade away, still we wake to try again today. Every story has two sides, every soul just wants to fight. What in strength is learning how to listen more than shouting loud. Not surrender, not defeat, step out of the crowd, one voice turning into many, many turning into one. We watched a moment